Hello and welcome to part 2 of the exam revision videos for the online world. This time it's on online documents. The last one was on online services, so if you need to have a quick look at that one, that's part 1, the exam revision one, so have a look at that. Otherwise, online documents, there is a little bit of overlap. I'll try not to say too many things twice that I've already said in previous videos, but there is a little bit of overlap, as I say. So let's crack on. Online documents. So the things that we need to talk about are file compression, why we use it, how it happens, how it works. We need to talk about online software and what's good about it. We need to talk about online software versus standalone software. We need to talk about setting version control on files, and we need to be doing some stuff about file permissions as well. Now, file compression is going to take a little while, the rest of them fairly quick. So let's make a start and get on with file compression. So, what is file compression? File compression is when you are reducing the size of a file. So you zip it up, which is often called it, they're often called zip files. So you zip it up, you compress it, and you make your file smaller than it was when you start off with. Now, two reasons you do that is one is so you can reduce the amount of space it takes up on your hard drive. So if you've got a massive great file, you can compress it, you can put it on your hard drive, it won't take up as much space, you've got more room. The other reason that you'll do it is if you then want to send that file on to somebody else, especially over a slow internet connection, then it's going to make it a smaller file and it will transfer faster. There are a couple of types that we're going to just go into now. A couple of different ways of compressing files, and a lot of this will depend on what type of file you're trying to compress. Is it a text file? Is it an image file? Is it an audio file? Is it a video file? Text files use something called lossless compression. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. And then images, audios, and videos use lossy compression. I'm only going to talk about images because that's probably what you really need to know. So let's go on. Text files. So what they do, it looks for a pattern in the text and it will replace it with a dictionary reference. So it will make a dictionary of things that come up more than once in a load of text, and it'll say, okay, so this word, I'm going to swap this word out for a number 1 instead and say this is my number 1 reference. And then it can just put that number 1 in every time it does that word, or part of word, or anything that repeats. It will just look for any kind of patterns at all until it finds out all the different patterns it's got, and it will shrink it down as much as possible by replacing those. Now, it's a little bit complicated to explain like that, so I have got an example. Right? So the example is, we have a little tongue twister. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? A woodchuck would chuck as much as he could if a woodchuck could chuck wood. Skills. So, this is 147 characters long, and for every single character you're going to be using up a certain amount of memory. So the more characters you have, the bigger your file size is going to be. So what I'm going to do, I'm now going to make a dictionary of some of the words that are repeated. So the word wood is repeated in here loads and loads of times, so there, it's all over the place. The word chuck as well is also repeated. I've also got O-U-L-D. You think, well, that's not a word, but where you've got could and would, they've all got O-U-L-Ds in. So I can replace that with that number and then just put a C in front. So if I put a C and then the number 3 afterwards, that would be C, then O-U-L-D, which is spelled could. So that's a way of reducing that. Much comes up a couple of times as well, so we're using that. Now if I was a computer, I'd be doing a lot more clever stuff, like working on the theory that, well, every time that there's the word would or could, there's also a space after it, so I could include that space in there as well, because we count spaces as characters, but I'm not going to get as complicated as that, just want to keep it simple. So, number 1 is the word would, number 2 is the word chuck, number 3 is the letters O-U-L-D, and number 4 is the word much. So I'm now going to swap those over. So, putting that dictionary into the text and swapping those words out, I've got this. L space 4 space 1 space C3 blah 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 all the way through, and that if you swap those words out and those letters out, is exactly the same thing as we had before. But it's only 74 characters. And I think that's brilliant, that's halved it. It was 147 before, it's just literally half of the characters that I've used. What you then have to remember is you also need to include the dictionary, otherwise people, the program won't know how to restore that stuff again, it won't know what those numbers stand for. So the dictionary itself takes up 30 characters, so 74 characters for our encoded or our compressed file, 30 characters for the dictionary, comes to 104 characters. So that's still quite a lot less. It's gone from 147 to 104 characters, so that means that it's about just over 2/3 the size it was. So that will make quite a lot of difference. Sorry if you can hear irritating noise in the background. It's a compressor in the thing next to it always makes this noise. It should stop fairly soon. So 104 characters instead of 147. So that's going to use a lot less space. What you then do when so that's compressed it. When you want to then expand it again, so uncompress it, put it back to how it was, you just swap out all the words and the letters, all the numbers that are in the dictionary, and then it will give you exactly the same text file as you started off with. It won't be any different, it will be identical to the original one. And that's why it's called lossless compression. So you compress it, but when you expand it again, it's exactly the same thing, because nothing has changed, you haven't lost any quality. So that's how text compression works. Right. Image compression is a little bit different. That's good, the noise has stopped. This is what they call lossy compression. So if we use this picture as an example, which is a very, very basic picture, an uncompressed version of this, every single pixel of this picture is going to have a value and saying, right, this is this colour, so this pixel is right, this pixel is white, this pixel is white, this pixel is white, all the way through, every single pixel, all the way through, until you get to these ones, you go, oh, well, this one's black, and this one's black, and this one's black, and this one's black. But every single pixel that's in that image is going to have its own value for a colour, so it's going to have its own, so it's taking a bit of memory for every single pixel. Now, when you put those together, that's great, because it builds it up like it does on a TV screen. It builds up all the pixels, gives you your final image. So you've got perfectly good image, excellent quality. But if you've got a 1024 by 768 image, which isn't that much, it's like 720p type stuff, so it's nothing particularly heavy in the way of resolution, that still works out as 786,432 pixels. And every single one of those pixels needs to have a value attached to it to tell you what colour it is, just for that one image. Now that's not a very efficient way of doing things. So, when you do lossy compression, what you do is the computer will look for blocks of the same colour. So, example, it will say, all of this stuff in the background and the window, that's all white. So what I can do, rather than saying, well, this pixel is white, and this pixel is white, and this pixel is white, I'm going to say all of this shape here, and the window shape, are all white. So you put that block aside and go, all those blocks are white. So you only have to say, well, this bit is white, this bit is white, this bit is white, and that's it. You said three things, three values, and they're all white. Then it will go through all the different colours. They go, right, well, these bits are black, these bits are blue, these bits are browny, and it will go through the same process. And what happens is you end up with a much reduced amount of blocks of colour. I mean, it still might be a few thousand, but it's not going to be 768,000. And then for each of those, you say what the shape is and what the colour is. And that's how it compresses the file. Now you think, well, that's great, because with this picture it's only got about 8 or 9 colours in. That's not a problem. No worries. So why is it lossy? Now if you were using this picture would be rather different, because what it would do, this lovely landscape here, it would say, okay, big chunks of this sky are blue. Some of it's white with the clouds, but a lot of it is blue. And it will say, right, I'm going to say that block of colour is blue. Now if you look at it very, very carefully, what you'll see is it's not all exactly the same shade of blue. It's slightly different. There are subtle differences in there. Also, if you've got pictures of people's faces or their skin, your skin isn't the same colour overall. It's all very slightly different colours, lots of different skin tones involved. So you can't just say everything is this colour and it will stay perfectly accurate, because it's not. And then if you do say this is all blue and this is just this particular colour blue, then it will stay like that. All that will be blue, and you'll have lost all of that detail of the slightly different subtle shades that you've got in there. And that's where you start to lose the detail and lose the quality. Once you've done that and you said, well, this bit's all blue, you can't then uncompress it and put those details back in again. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like the text one, where you're able to say, well, this number meant this word, so I can just replace that word back again. It will be exactly the same. You can't do that with this. Once you've said this bit is blue, it's blue. You can't take it back again. So because of that, you can't get the quality back afterwards. So that's why it's lossy compression, because you've lost quality of the image. Same with videos and MP3s, things like that. Depending on what bit rate your MP3s are, will depend on the quality. And if you have really, really low quality bit rate MP3s, and then try and make them better quality, they don't sound any different. They still sound a bit rubbish. So, lossy and lossless compression. Those are the two things you need to worry about. So, text, you can do lossless. That means that you can compress it using that dictionary, uncompress it again, expand it again, and it's exactly the same. Whereas with an image, you're going to compress it, but when you can't expand it again and get it back to how it was, you just lose that quality. You may not notice it. A lot of the time you don't notice things. This image is probably already compressed because it's a JPEG that I got off the internet, and JPEGs are compressed files. You'd need to have things like a RAW file or individual bitmap file to actually have an uncompressed file structure. So this one probably already has been compressed, but you don't particularly notice it because they haven't taken big blocks. They've just said, right, this little bit here is blue and this little bit here is this slightly different blue. And it's been done very well, so you don't particularly notice it. But it still wouldn't be the same quality as the original image, and that's the important thing. Right, that's file compression done. That's the complicated bit. Now it gets a little bit easier. So, online software. What is online software? We've talked a little bit about this in the previous video, but it's a program that's based on the internet, not your computer. So you don't have a program installed like Word that's been installed on your computer. You log on to a web page and all of the programs are on that website, and they're run by a server or another computer up in the cloud somewhere. So you don't have to have that particular thing on your machine. You just connect to it, you can start working on your files, you can start using the program, and you don't need to have it on your machine itself. What you do need to have though, you need to have an internet connection for it to work, and people just connect to that program using the internet, and anybody that you give access to can connect to that file or can connect to that program. So you can work on things together if you want to. What it will also do is when you've finished with it, it saves the file to the cloud. It doesn't save it on your computer where it could get messed up. It will save it on the cloud somewhere on a server, or probably on a couple of different servers around the world. So if one of them blows up, it's not a big deal. It will save it somewhere else, backups in other places. So that's what online software is. So what are the advantages of doing it? So collaborative working is probably the biggest advantage, or one of the biggest advantages. That means that you can have more than one person working on the file at once. If you're thinking about maybe you're writing somebody a letter, and if you're doing it on Word, you might go, okay, well, I've written this letter, I don't know if it needs some work on it. I'll email it or stick it on a memory stick and give it to my friend. They can have a look at it, they can make some changes. Then they have to email it back to me or give it back to me on a memory stick, and I can look at it and I can make some more changes, and we just have to and fro like that until everything's sorted. If it's on the cloud, using online software, they can look at the file the same time that you're looking at it. So you can have it up there, they can make changes live. So you can say, what do you think of this bit? No, don't like this bit, change it for this line instead. It's done immediately, so the response time is a lot quicker. And you can have as many people working on that as you want. So if you've got a big database or a big spreadsheet, you can have some people entering data in one column, you entering data in another column. It all gets updated as you go along. So it can save an awful lot of time and effort over in the long run. Also, you can share the files a lot more easily. Anybody can log on to that file. And as I said before, everything is automatically backed up onto the cloud as you work on it. So as you make changes, it saves itself onto the cloud, which will be in 2 or 3 different places. So you shouldn't be able to lose the work because your computer's blown up or something like that. You also get the most recent version. So if, for instance, you'd been working on that letter, given it to somebody, they've made some changes, given it back, you might have made some changes yourself in that time. So what they've given back to you is not your latest version. So you've then got to give it back to them, and it kind of wastes everybody's time. And what it does is it means you're duplicating work. Somebody does something to work on a file that you've given them, you're doing the same thing on the file as well. You don't realise you're both doing the same thing because they're separate documents, and you just waste time. Whereas if it's online, you're working on the same document, so somebody goes to make these changes and goes, oh, actually, someone's already done that, I can have a bit of time off, or get on with something else. So that's all really useful. You also don't need to have the software on your machine, and you don't need to have a very powerful machine. So all the programming and all the processing is being done online by the servers online. So you don't need to have the program installed. As long as you can get onto an internet connection and view a web page, that's probably enough. That's all your computer will need to do. But those are all advantages of online software. The other one, which I haven't got on here, is that you can work on it from anywhere that you've got an internet connection. So if you want to work in the office, or if you want to work at home, or if you want to work in the park because it's a nice day, as long as you've got an internet connection, you can carry on using these. So that's all good things about online software. Right, online software versus standalone software. By standalone software, what we mean is the software that you just install on your computer. Like we have Word installed on computers here, and Excel and Publisher and PowerPoint and all the others. They're all standalone bits of software. You could take that computer away, it would still have the software on it. So like your computer's at home or your laptop's at home. It doesn't matter where you take your laptop, that program is still there. It doesn't matter if you're connected to the internet or not, you can work on that program. So, online versus standalone software. So this is the online stuff. Like we said, you don't need software. It automatically backs up to the cloud. You can share the files easily. You can do collaborative working. And you can have a low power PC. We've kind of covered that already. You must have an internet connection to use it. Can't stress that enough. This is the big downside of online software. If you don't connect to the internet, you can't do anything. You can't do any work. And also, you need to have a stable internet connection. No point in your internet connection cutting out every few seconds or being really, really slow, because it's just going to cause all sorts of hassles when you're trying to work on it. You'll be working on something and it'll be coming out really, really slow. You'll type in a couple of letters, and it'll take about 3 minutes before they actually come up on the screen if your internet connection is too slow. So it's very important that you have a stable internet connection, preferably a fast internet connection, and it's got to be reliable. So that's the downside of that, but these are all good sides. For the standalone stuff, you do need the software, so you might need to pay for it as well. You might have to pay for online software too, but some of it's free. But you might have free software here, but the important thing is you need to have installed that software on your machine. You need to own that software. And also, you need to have a computer that's able to run it. So it needs to be fast enough to run that. For most programs we use, online and standalone versions, your computer will be perfectly fine running it, but it's just another thing you need to bear in mind. If you want to do backups and saves, you have to do it manually. Now, Word and those kind of things will automatically save your work as you go along, but if you want to have a backup of it, saved somewhere else, you're going to have to do that yourself, or set it up as an automated backup on your machine. It won't do it automatically like it does on an online thing. So as soon as you save it, as soon as you do some work on it, it automatically saves it for you. This one won't do that, you'll have to do that manually. It can be more difficult to share files because they're not there all the time. So you've got to email it to people, or you've got to stick it on a memory stick or a CD, or however you're going to send it across. You need to send it to them in some way. They can't look at it live. They can only see a version that you've given to them. Because of that, it's a lot less easy to do collaborative work. You can send things to people, they can work on them as well, but because it's not live until they're finished, you don't get to see what their changes are. So it's just not as good. It's doable, but it's not as good. But the main thing is, you don't need an internet connection. So if you were in the middle of nowhere, in the wilderness for some reason, or you're somebody that goes out and maybe sets people's satellite dishes up or things like that, and where you happen to be, there is no internet connection, then you couldn't use online work stuff, you'd have to use standalone software. So if you don't have access to a stable, strong, fast internet connection, you probably need to go with standalone software. If you do have access to that, then there's some good reasons for using online software, but that's the choice that your business or you have to make when you know what the rules are, what your situation is. Right, last bit. That'll go away in a minute. Version control and permissions. So, just need to know what they are and what they mean. Version control. So, as you work on a document, you're going to keep making changes to it. Now, it's a very good idea, and this also goes for when you're doing your coursework and things like that, that if you're working on a document, you might save it as version 1 or version 2 or version 1.1 or something like that. So you'll give it a different number just to kind of say, well, this is my old version, this is my new version. Because if you then go ahead and do some stuff on your new version and it was all rubbish, you can go back to the old version. You've also got evidence saying that, well, this is what this file looked like on Wednesday, I've saved that then, I've now done this, it's Friday, I've done all this work. Your evidence is that you've done something. So you can see that your file has evolved, you can see that you can go back to versions if you need to. And then you just need to make sure that when you're sending things to people, you send them the most up-to-date version. But it is a good idea to have those things, it's like a form of backup as well. So when you're doing things like your web pages, and when you're making other things, it's always a good idea to save things in different versions, so you can always go back to an old version that was working. So if you've done something and all of a sudden your website just crashed, you don't have to start from scratch, you can go back to the last version that was still working. So it's a good way of doing things. Then we've got permissions. So there are really only 3 permissions that you need to worry about, which are read-only, read-write, and full control. Now, permissions are things that you set on a file. So if you've put a file somewhere, maybe on an online storage thing or online program, or if you put it on a folder or a shared folder on your network at work or at home, you can then set the amount of permissions that people have to do things with that file. It could be that you make it read-only, which means that people can look at it, they can see it, but they can't make any changes at all, and they can't delete it. They can just open it and look at it, that's all they can do. If it's read-write, that means that they can look at it, and they can also make changes, but they can't delete it. So if you want somebody to maybe look at some of your work and help you with it, that's fantastic. You can give them read-write options, but it means that they can't delete it by mistake. If you want to have somebody have full control, so all the amount of control that you have over your files as well, then you change it to full control, then they can read it, they can write it, they can delete it, do the whole lot. And you might do this to a folder as well, so you might make a folder where people can read stuff in the folder, or they can change stuff in the folder, but they can't delete it. But if you give them full control, they can delete stuff in the folder, they can also add new things to the folder. So those are the kind of things that you might be using those for. And depending on what your situation is and what you're doing and what your particular file is, you may want to restrict what people can do. If you've spent ages making something and want people just to check it over, just give them read-only access, because you don't want them changing anything. You put all that hard work in, you don't want them to mess it up. If you want them to help you with it, but don't completely trust them, give them read-write access, then they can't delete anything, but they can still help you with the changes. And if you completely trust them and you want to give them the same permissions as you go for full control. And that's it for online documents. Hopefully that was helpful. It's another long one. A lot of these are tending to be fairly long videos. Hope it's not too bad for you, but I can't really split them up into smaller chunks. So I'll see you in the next one, part 3, and hope it was helpful.